For peace in Ukraine, who would be better, Trump or Biden? Disclaimer, when I'm talking about Biden in particular, I'm referring to his administration because of, well, reasons. Let's start with Trump, who has said, "I will have the war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20. And thus many of his supporters say he's the one to go for if you want peace. But how does he expect to achieve this? As reported by Reuters, he's been presented with a peace plan from two of his top advisors, Kellogg and Fleets, who were chief of staff in his National Security Council during his presidency. This plan will drastically break from the Biden administration's plan and will force Ukraine to the negotiating table. Kellogg said in an interview that he told Trump, "We tell the Ukrainians, you've got to come to the table, and if you don't come to the table, support from the United States will dry up. And you tell Putin he's got to come to the table, and if you don't come to the table, then we'll give the Ukrainians everything they need to kill you in the field." Kellogg said it would be crucial for domestic reasons to get Russia and Ukraine to the negotiating table quickly if Trump wins the election. Will this work though? There's a good chance it would be rejected by both parties, and according to the research paper Kellogg and Fleets published, a lasting peace in Ukraine would require arming Ukraine to the teeth indefinitely to deter Russia from invading again. So one would have to ask, to Republicans who resent the US spending more than $70 billion on military aid to Ukraine, is this really a better solution? And the US would still need to contend with a far from unarmed Russia rebuilding its strength, biding its time, and a very resentful Ukraine armed to the teeth. And although Fleet saying, "I'm not claiming Trump agreed with it or agreed with every word of it, but we were pleased to get the feedback we did," it's very hard to gauge what Trump is really intending. Although Trump's allies did hold up the $60 billion supplemental aid package to Ukraine earlier this year for 6 months, and he did say that China, Russia, and North Korea would be friends with the US under his presidency. And talking about the Ukrainian soldiers, he said they are being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and he's called Zelensky the greatest salesman ever, according to Marensko, head of Ukraine's Parliament Foreign Relations Committee. Everything Trump said about Ukraine reeks of cheap populism. He's urged people to take Trump's messaging with a pinch of salt, for as a politician, by default, Trump would be anti-anything Biden has done. Marensko says that after the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia inevitably fails, Trump will realize it's unrealistic and he will continue to help Ukraine and may even increase this assistance. So in Marensko's point of view, there might be no difference between Trump and Biden at all, and this might be further proof of Churchill's old adage, "You can always count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else." And now moving the topic along, about the US arming Ukraine, I get a lot of comments saying, "The biggest threat to world peace is the United States of America." I see this sentiment a lot, and it's fundamentally false, and to espouse it is to inherently misunderstand how peace works. Quite simply, peace is the status quo. The status quo is the equilibrium of power that has come to be after a period of imbalance, for example, after war. Let's think of Europe leading up to World War I. After the defeat of Napoleon, the borders within Europe were redrawn to create equilibrium between the different states. This was the new status quo, and maintaining it was how one maintained peace. And imbalance, the rise of Germany in particular, was what led to World War I. And after that, when the new status quo was drawn up, it was Britain and France's inability to stop Germany changing the new status quo that led to World War II. And now we come to today. It really doesn't matter whether you agree with how the US came into this position, and how much you like them having this much influence doesn't particularly matter at all either. The fundamental truth is they are the player today in maintaining the status quo. Globalized trade, dozens of bilateral and multilateral defense treaties, keeping everyone's expansionist aspirations in check are dependent on American hegemony. You might call out the terrible wars America has participated since World War II, as proof of America stirring up instability, but in fact they were done in an attempt of keeping the status quo. And the moment America stopped intervening, for example in Ukraine, revisionist powers will sniff an opportunity to change the status quo and form a new one in their image, and I'm afraid this would likely mean World War III. In essence, maintaining the status quo is maintaining peace. America is the maintainer of the current status quo and thus cannot be argued to be the biggest threat to world peace. Rather, the loss of American hegemony is the biggest threat to world peace. However, whether you like this current status quo is up to you, but changing it will likely mean war. Thanks for listening.